I think we're live. Yes.
Okay.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for
Hello.
joining us.
Hi. Nice to see everyone.
We're very excited to have y'all here, and we're very excited to share our unique perspectives into what it's like to be a woman in the technology space, but in two different career paths. So, thank you all for submitting your questions prior to this, and we hope that we can provide you some answers that will give you a little bit of more guidance of what's it like to be a woman in the tech space. My name is Anna Medina. I'm currently working at a small startup based out of San Francisco that focuses on building a resiliency product. So we actually help companies avoid downtime. So your favorite websites, such as like Amazon and like Netflix, that sometimes are like not working properly because they're having outages and stuff like that. We help companies start tackling those issues and have more resilient software for y'all to continue using. Prior to this, I was an engineer at Uber for about 2 years, doing something like around the same space. And apart from that, I've gotten a chance to work at companies like Google, Quicken Loans, a small startup based out of Miami, Florida, and also do some college research. And here with us, we also have Sofie.
Hi, everyone. My name's Sofie, and we're here at Google, which is where I work. I am a program manager in Google Cloud, and I do what's called business transformation. So I help make Googlers in our cloud business more efficient. I work on their systems and tools, all the data that they need to do their jobs to sell to our customers and support our customers. So I've done this for a couple of years. I was in sales previously before that and selling G Suite, which is Google products like what we're using now, Hangouts. And before that, I was in school down in Southern California at Scripps College. So super excited. Loved reading some of your questions, and we're excited to start answering some of them. Yeah. So I'll kick off the first one, which comes from Takalon at John Marshall High School Academy of Finance. And it's a really good starting point for our conversation today. So his question is, I'm really interested in this field of work. How do I start down the path into engineering or into the tech field in general?
That's a great question. I think everyone always kind of wants to be like, I want to work at a tech company. I want to work at a company like Google, Microsoft that carries this huge name, but you don't necessarily know what that even means or what that entails. So I'll talk a little bit about how I got started into engineering. I actually come from like a very non-traditional background. I was born and raised in Costa Rica. My parents are from Nicaragua, and I moved to Miami, Florida at like a very young age. While I was in Miami, I actually got a chance to attend a school that had an AF Academy, G. Holmes Braddock, based out of Miami, Florida. There, I got a chance to concentrate on like the web design and the digital design, like magnet school academy. And by then, I already had a little bit of like coding skills. For me, I actually got started by randomly playing around with a computer and then realizing that you can kind of like put code and this website looks really pretty and I have glitter and I have these really cool gifs. So that made me really, really like it. I'm creating something out of nothing. And then I started just pretty much trying to find out what that means. So I actually had a freelance business doing like web design for different like small businesses based out of Miami. And I got a chance to get an internship because of like the NAF Academy that was based on my high school, where I went into a credit union for a summer and I helped them build a mobile web application that was very much like a mobile application. And it just made me realize that I had been doing this thing as a hobby to help my parents financially, but there was actually a career into it. So then I learned that I could go to college for computer science, computer engineering, and then I just started going down that path and like learning how to code. So I think the best starting point for anyone that's like, hey, I want to be an engineer at a tech company. I want to learn how to code. I want to write software. You can start off by like going on to like codeacademy.com. They're one of the best resources that will give you a little bit of the fundamentals of what it means to actually write code and talk to the computer, tell the computer what to do. Their main focus is to do web design, but web design is a very good entry way into tech because you get to build something, put it out live, tell people like, hey, I'm doing this. Can you give me a little bit of feedback, critique? And then you continue building on from there. But there's more to the tech space than just being an engineer. There's a lot more that goes into building an entire tech company too.
Yeah, so I guess that kind of segues into my experience, which is less on the engineering side. I actually went to school and graduated with a politics degree, which is not at all similar to what I ended up doing. I started getting interested in tech. I did an internship the summer before I graduated from school at Intel, and I was in their marketing department, and that's kind of my first. That was my first experience, I guess, in the tech industry, and I just loved it. It's an exciting place to be. You feel like you're building, the next most exciting generation of products, and it's just kind of feels like the sky's the limit, basically, in what folks are focused on. So I definitely was inspired by that experience, and wanted to figure out how to translate my liberal arts or reading and writing sort of background into a career in tech. So I went to a lot of panels like this, talked to people who are already in the industry, and realized that having a good foundation of reading, writing, analytical skills, which I'm sure you're already building in school, is also super valuable to this industry, and even to engineering, of course, I'm sure too. So I kind of was able to figure out how to spin that background into one of the non-engineering roles. So a lot of people start in sales or in customer service, building out programs or projects for companies. When you're working at a startup or at a small company like Google Cloud kind of was transitioning to when I started, there's a lot of work to be done. So lots of skills, being able to solve problems on the fly, like all of those are really important things to understand. And communication in general. So I think as you go through school, you're focused a lot on doing homework and like getting stuff done, but also being able to articulate the work that you have done is super valuable. Doing interview practice early, talking with friends. I'm sure you have like speech courses in school. That stuff's also super helpful, just to be able to kind of articulate how your value can help you get to where you want to go. So I think we'll move on to our next question, which is actually was a popular one. So a lot of different students were asking about this, but this specific one comes from Maria from Harmony Magnet AOE and Aditi at Mountain Ridge AOF. So the question is, how difficult was it to become an engineer? Were there any obstacles that came in trying to advance your career? Anna?
So it's like there's no such thing as like it's easy difficulty or medium difficulty or hard difficulty. I would say that it wasn't a very much like an easy sail for me. I kind of touched a little bit earlier that I come from a little bit non-traditional, because I got a chance to teach myself early on what it was like to code and quote unquote be an engineer. That I kind of I was very big on focus on I know how to teach myself best, and I know I can just set aside like a few hours at a time and just concentrate and like teaching myself other skills that are particular to the engineering space. So I did a lot of that when I was in high school and even in college. But for me, like I realized that I wasn't meeting like the mold that fit into college. I couldn't find a community that I fit in that would kind of like push me to go to school, do my homework and stuff like that. It got to the point that I was only submitting my homework online and my labs and showing up for midterms and finals, and I never went to lectures. So for me, I actually went down the little bit less traditional path of dropping out of college and just basically telling companies like, here's my resume, here's all the places that I've worked, these are some of the things I've built, you should hire me because this is what I bring to the table. So it was a very, very hard on that part, because I had to prove myself that I actually knew all this tech things that I was saying that I did, when people from top Ivy League schools were also coming out and saying like, oh, I do these things, but I also have this degree. And I think maybe a little bit of the harder part of becoming an engineer is getting your foot in the door. So for me, I actually got a chance to have amazing mentorship and have these internship opportunities in high school, that by my freshman year of college, I came across like an internship at Google and was very much of like, oh man, this is a place that I've always wanted to work at since I was young. I thought I wasn't gonna get it. I applied and I got accepted. And then I came on to Google the summer of 2013 for a summer. And then I stayed on board with them for about 2 years working on student marketing and outreach efforts. But by the time that I dropped out of college later on, it was like, oh yeah, by the way, I have this big tech company name under my belt. So I had that way into my, my foot at the door was having a really, really strong resume and being able to prove that I knew what it was like. But then there's also the part where it's like, yeah, you brought your name into the door, your resume is being looked at by a recruiter, by the right people, but then comes the entire interviewing stage that it's just interviewing in general is really hard, it's really nerve-wracking, and it takes a lot of communication skills to be able to explain why you want to work there. Ask the right questions too. Is like there's a lot that goes into making sure that you're a right fit to the company on both sides. The company saying, hey, we want you to work here, but you also as an individual have to be like, y'all like have really good values, y'all are doing something really awesome, I want to be part of it. And then when it comes to engineering interviews, there's various different like types of engineering interviews, where some of them are like they'll give you a project, a take-home test that they're like, hey, can you solve this issue of like, I want to be able to build a website that pulls up all this other information from a database and puts it all pretty in pink color with glitter and unicorns every time someone clicks. Let's say that's a take-home test. And you have to go home, figure out how to build it, and then turn it in the turnaround time that they give you. But then there's also other tests that's like, you kind of have to hop on a call with an engineer and solve the problem as y'all go. And that's also like a lot of fun because you kind of get to see how you're going to be working with engineers at that company. And there's are the ones that I like loathe and hate that are called like whiteboard interviews. We're very much pushing in the industry for those interviews to stop being a thing, where they're more on the theory of computer science and how to implement algorithms and like do certain like sorting and things like that, but they never actually ever apply to the code or the things that you're ever going to have to do on the job. So those are usually the ones that are the most nerve-wracking, because there's like a few books out there that are called like Cracking the Coding Interview, that it just goes over like hundreds of questions of like, hey, we can possibly ask you about this binary tree and what's the fastest way to actually sort through all this data. And those are very stressful interviews.
Kind of like the SAT.
Yeah, yes, very, very similar. So those sometimes are the most nerve-wracking, but there's a lot of support out there for helping people get better at these interviews. So in your community, sometimes there's like tech spaces that will sit with you and work through these programs. And there's also mock interviews. Mock interviews is actually something that I actually had to go through a lot of that early in high school due to like mentorship that I had from NAV. But also when I was coming into like the tech space, it's like I had friends, I had other women in tech that were willing to be like, hey, you can put some time in my calendar and I can tell you what it's like to interview at Facebook. I can tell you what it's like to go to the algorithms type of stuff at Amazon and stuff like that. So being able to share this knowledge kind of like makes it a little bit easier. We're going to move on to the next question. So the next two questions dive deeper with the understanding that there's a lot of fear that young women have into coming into the tech space or any STEM-based career. So Kylie from Southeast Raleigh Magnet Academy of Engineering asks, what is it like entering a primarily male field, and how do you work to overcome gender bias and other obstacles in your career?
Yeah, I think, that's definitely a question we get a lot. And it was one I think that I thought about a lot too when I was entering the tech field a couple of years ago. And yeah, the reality is that the gender imbalance is really, it's shocking, right? It's hard going from school where you feel like, most of your classes are pretty balanced. Tons of smart women who are, definitely really ambitious, and you're excited to work with them in your future careers. So it is hard to end up here and not see as many women or minorities as you'd like. But I think one thing that helps with that is keeping a strong network of female peers, colleagues, and mentors and sponsors especially too. So from my very first start into Google, I've built out a network of female peers through, education and diversity groups. So most even startups now have either like women-based groups or minority groups or just clubs in general that help people come together who have similar backgrounds or values or goals. And those are really helpful. They put on events like this for women in tech, which is a great place to go to be inspired and know that there's women above you who are already like breaking down barriers for you and helping to pull people up behind them too. And then in addition to that, I think mentors and sponsors is a huge part too. I think Anna touched on this, right? Making sure that you have not only people who are there to give you advice when you need it, but also people who are willing to vouch on your behalf too. That's super important. A lot of closed door conversations around promotions and stuff happen, and you're not there to advocate for yourself. So you need people who are going to advocate on your behalf, and that's really important. And then besides that, I think one thing I'd emphasize too is just authenticity. I think a lot of the women that I seek out to be my mentors are they're super comfortable being themselves, right? And not trying to join a boys club or to act some way that they think women in tech are supposed to act. So that's definitely something that I've also tried to bring to my own career, is like bringing my full self to work, not being afraid to advocate for myself and be myself. And I think that encourages other women to also, not feel pressured to conform to some definition of what a woman's supposed to be. Do you have anything to add to that too?
Yeah, you definitely touched on amazing points. And I think I have two things that I like feel very strongly about. Is very much of like, you are building the world that you want to see. So I try to also kind of like mentor a lot of other women that are trying to enter this space, just to kind of like show them, hey, it's not easy, but I'm here in case you need anything, if you need a hug, if you need a dinner date, or if you just need to vent out. So it's not just about like saying that we want to build a better culture, but it's actually putting the time and effort to be there for one another. So there is that comes to it. So I spend a lot of time in support groups and like being part of organizations that are trying to build a better like tech space, but also quote unquote like stop saying that there's like a tech pipeline, that there's like not enough women that are coming in that want to enter this space, and that's the reason that this is still a very male-dominated field. So trying to work with those organizations to also like share my story and continue encouraging other women like, hey, there might not be a 50-50 representation of us right now, but we're striving to get there. And the way that we're going to do that is by supporting one another and bringing each other up, which is sometimes like not as common in some industries. And I think mentors, I think that would be probably like the best one, because like sadly it's come to a point where sometimes at companies you just don't get promoted and you have to like cross diagonally in order to get to the senior level that you want. But at the same time, when you're trying to cross, sometimes you can find like bad actors that are at other companies and you don't know how to like handle that. So in the tech community, for me, something that has helped me very much is like there is like back channels that like talk about actual like just work issues of what it's actually like to be a woman in the space, what's it like to be a mom in that space, what's it like to come in like with like in the LGBTQ space and work at a tech company, or just more of like, hey, how do I deal with like mental health issues at work? Is this company one that's like willing to accommodate the fact that one day like I'm just having a lot of anxiety of a panic attack and I need to cancel some meetings, and it's just finding the right fit to what you're looking for. So there is a lot of that still kind of like goes on, and like that helps you stay in technology and continue moving forward in your career.
And these conversations are definitely happening more, right? And that helps open the door to not only women having conversations among themselves around how do we deal with these things, but also bringing in allies from other groups to make sure that they're also making an effort to improve the space for everyone. So we'll move on to our next question. It's kind of on a similar note, and it's from Evelyn from Rancho Campana AOHS. And she asks, do employers discriminate against female engineers when they are hiring? And also, is there a huge wage gap?
Yeah, so this is a hard question, and I'm really, really glad we see students that are still thinking about entering this space ask this, because I definitely wish I would have been equipped with more knowledge about this when I was starting to choose a career and stuff like that. Sadly, discrimination still happens. Sadly, it's still been an issue at places that I've worked, at conferences that I've been to, at places that I've interviewed but not taken a job. There is a bias into thinking the women are not equipped to come to this job, even if they have the exact same experience. So some companies are tackling that by looking at resumes without like stripping away like anything that can identify as a gender, such as the name or photos or social media profiles. That way they're able to look at candidates just for the actual substance of what they can bring to the table. And then there's also a lot of movement around talking about like your salary openly. That way you're also knowing what the white males in tech are making and what the black women in tech are making, or like the Latina women in tech are making. That way you're actually able to be like, hey, we both kind of got the same learning, we've worked for the same amount of years, we've worked on these large projects, but why is there like a 30% discrepancy in our salaries? And from my experience, I actually saw a little bit of that when I was at Uber and among like a lot more of like toxic culture. And I wasn't okay with that. So me and like a coworker, we actually brought a class action lawsuit against Uber for gender and racial discrimination based on equal pay, just for engineers though. This covered female engineers, this covered Latina engineers, black engineers, and Native American engineers. So engineers that identified as minorities, we felt that we weren't getting the same resources as our peers when it came to promotions, when it came to equal pay, among other things around the company. But we wanted to bring a little bit more public attention to this, and we also wanted the company to build different things in their system in order to stop that from happening. So one of those things that I really, really like is like if you're a minority in the space and you come into Uber as an engineer, um, you get hired, you get like all these tasks, but there's no support. So they're providing mentors that are going to be checking in on you, and you can decline if you don't want to go that route. But then there's also another part that 6 months after you start, they'll do a check-in with you and they'll actually tell you, hey, you actually are lacking your communication skills. Maybe you can work on that by joining organizations like Toastmasters, or maybe it's just more of like working on communicating what your expectations and what you're working on a lot more. So just having people just be more open about things, I think, is one of the things that we're seeing go on more. And that's the way that like the wage gap and discrimination are kind of like getting tackled.
Yeah, I think, great response, and thank you for sharing that. The only other thing I would add is just there are a lot of salary negotiation courses that you can take, and I would highly recommend that. A lot of times, it's not so much that your promotion salary is different than other people at the companies, but if you come in at a much lower spot, then you're not setting yourself up to make the same jumps as other people might be. So lynda.com has a bunch of those. They're really great, highly recommend, and just good for getting comfortable talking about salary too. There's a lot of stigma around talking about it for some reason. And so, you can look at sites like Glassdoor, LinkedIn, they share salaries publicly, and getting comfortable talking about money in general is a really good skill. So I think we're going to wrap up, but thank you so much for everyone to sharing their questions. If you have any more questions, you can comment on this YouTube video. You can also DM NAF Academy on Instagram. But your questions are really important to us, so please do continue to ask them, and we're happy to do more stuff like this. And we're excited that there's so many brilliant, driven young women who are interested in tech. Can't wait to have you.
Yes, we're making sure that we're building the space that y'all want to come into and just build it as inclusive as we can. Sometimes what we didn't see when we were coming into the field, we're making sure that we're putting it in place for y'all to join us soon. This video is gonna be recorded and put on the NAF YouTube. If you want to share this with your friends or continue looking back on this and writing down some of the advices we've given y'all, but please keep these questions coming. Either comment them on the YouTube or Instagram, like send a DM over to like the NAF Academy, and we'll make sure to like cover them next time.
Yeah. Well, sounds great.
Thank you
All
all.
right, thank you. Bye.